The Champions League. You know it. You love it. I'm glad to be back because this is a great opportunity to talk about Liverpool losing. I'm not a hater. I hate every team equally in the amount that I believe they deserve to be hated, if that makes sense. But I will tell you this. I am usually rooting for the underdog. So if your team is the favorite, I'm probably going to be rooting against your team. I hope that's okay. I just feel like sports is all about rooting for the underdog, and most of the time they lose. To be honest, that's my sporting as we approach March Madness. That's just something that is resonating in my mind more than usual. And we're getting a couple of great underdog runs here, starting with Galatasaray, as we're going through all the different Champions League matches and breaking down what happened. This is your sounding board, right? If I don't make these people get all mad now. So this is your Champions League recap video. Galatasaray with the 1-0 over Liverpool. We got Gabon's finest, Mario Lemina, scoring the goal to get things started for Liverpool, or to get things started for Liverpool in a bad way. I suppose that's a true statement. But the issue for Liverpool is that this is a very difficult game. This has happened kind of under people's noses in a sense, but the actual lineup and the quality that Galatasaray is able to bring clearly surprised Juventus in the previous round. And even though Juve nearly pulled off like a kind of a miraculous remontada, like a miraculous comeback in their own house where they pushed it to extra time only to lose anyways, this Galatasaray team's better than the name would suggest. And it's not like the name of Galatasaray is not valuable, right? They have a European Cup from like 25 years ago or whatever in Europa League. But, I mean, the players on this team are very good. They're very good. The atmosphere, particularly when you go over to Turkey, is really good. Now, would Galatasaray probably be, Galatasaray obviously is not at the same level as Liverpool when it comes to position-by-position quality, right? They don't have Van Dijk and Konate walking out there, but they do have Davinson Sanchez. You know what I mean? Like, they've got guys that are not going to be intimidated by this setup at all. They've got guys that are high enough level that home advantage Galatasaray has is able to make a serious difference. I picked this. I sat there on, I was doing a 24-hour stream the same time Zealand was doing it, and obviously I appreciate him covering the videos. I sat there and I said, I think Galatasaray is going to win this game. Because if you're a team that is not in great form, which Liverpool's not in great form, you're a team that's kind of been struggling, chugging along relative to what you feel like you should be doing. And then you run into a team like Galatasaray that is flying high. That's coming, the last time they played at home, they beat Juventus 5-2. But that's a really impressive result. This just felt like, I'm surprised that Liverpool didn't score. I was feeling like a 3-2. I wasn't feeling a 1-0. But this is a more organized performance from Galatasaray than maybe what we've seen previously. I would still make Liverpool the favorites to advance. But if Galatasaray was going to do this, they absolutely had to win at home, and they've now won. And because of the poor form that Liverpool has been in, I'm going to float something for you. Because of the poor form that Liverpool has been in, if things start to go poorly, the crowd's going to turn, and the home advantage will turn into a home disadvantage. Right? This is not a team that is flying through Europe for the first time, or a team even you could say like a Tottenham, where this is house money. Right? They're not supposed to be at this point in the Champions League. They got bigger shit going on, like trying to stay in the Premier League in general. And so they're, if things start to go well, the fans are going to really get behind them. If things go poorly, they're going to be like, look, well, at least we still have a chance here. But Liverpool knows they should be the better team here. They know they should be capable of beating Galatasaray, and they're not right now. They're not beating them. They're behind. And so the longer it goes goalless, or if Galatasaray happens to clip an early goal, that home advantage will turn into a disadvantage, right? And the Liverpool fans will, for the time they are making noise, be, kind of jeering and whistling. And it's going to be a nervy environment, a nervous, high-pressure environment for Liverpool because the weight of expectation is going to be all on them still, even though I think Galatasaray is definitely good enough to keep making a run in this tournament. Like, this might not, Galatasaray's already claimed one major scalp. Liverpool's better than Juventus. They're trying to level up what they're able to claim, but this is a really good team. Speaking of teams that aren't really good teams, Atalanta got destroyed by Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich might be the best team in Europe. I mean, because it's happening in the Bundesliga, sometimes it feels like it's happening in the dark, but if you turn the light on, if you hit the light switch, they've been destroying their domestic league. The domestic league that kind of destroyed them not that long ago. But they have bounced back, and this Bayern Munich team, much the same as PSG, has built a core of players. Obviously, bringing in Harry Kane didn't hurt either. They've built a core of players that are just really fucking good. And they're going to be good for a really long time. Right? Like they have identified and brought in players that are able to raise their level to just be dominant forces. Now, there were some injuries. Musiala and Alphonso Davies went off the field in this match. Davies was crying. He's captaining a World Cup host in like 3.5 months. So I hope that he's able to do that because he is Canada. Right? Canada has a lot more decent players than people realize, but obviously Alphonso Davies is the guy on the billboard. Like you need him. Now, Atalanta scores the goal late to start the comeback here. They need to win by 5 in Munich. It's not going to happen. The tough look for Serie A continues, by the way. This is Italy's last team in the competition getting just dragged at home by a 6-pack from Bayern Munich. I mean, just fucking flattened them. Hello, good afternoon and good night sort of operation here from Bayern Munich. But look, it's Bayern, PSG, or Arsenal are the only 3 answers I would accept. Arsenal because of how well they've played in the Champions League, and obviously they are still first in the Prem. Bayern Munich has just been massacring the Bundesliga. And then PSG, just because I think the way they're playing in Ligue 1 is like a hangover, and they're not really that emotionally invested in it. But PSG just, they were the best team, obviously, in Europe last year, and they're young, and I think just going through some learning pains and progressing towards continuing to be the best team in Europe into the future. Because PSG has broken things down and rebuilt it in a new way. And we're going to see them at some point in this process as well. But before we can go there, we've got the Atletico Madrid and Tottenham matches. Now, Zealand obviously came on and talked about the goalkeeper for Tottenham. So you know everything, there is to know about that. But Atletico Madrid, this one is not as over as I think people think that it is because there are 3 goals in the first 16 minutes. It feels like it's over. We have seen 3-goal comebacks in the Champions League before. You could say, well, it wasn't Tottenham that did that. That's true. But at no point when you're down 3 goals is anybody going, oh, yeah. When Barcelona was going on the road against Liverpool, nobody was like, well, Liverpool's got a real good chance. It's not a real good chance. But this one is not over, right? Tottenham is not completely out of this, and they did play actually pretty well after going down 3 goals, which the good news for them is they're going to start down 3 goals in the next match. Newcastle and Barcelona. Barcelona gets a very late penalty. Definitely a pen, though. Lamine Yamal able to put it away. That robs Newcastle of the best 10 minutes of their lives where they had the lead against Barcelona thanks to Harvey Barnes in the 86th minute. This just shows, the challenge of playing against Premier League opposition that you come into if you're a team like Barcelona on the road, Northern England. This is not an easy match, and the Premier League is deeper than any other league in the world. And so you could grab any mid-table Premier League team and they're going to be able to give you a really good game on any given night. Newcastle is better than that as well. Newcastle is no longer, in the fully just happy to be here category. They expect something of themselves in this situation, and they delivered. There was a great quote from Lamine Yamal after this match where he was talking about, when you get the ball and, playing against an English team. I think the quote was real. I should probably check in this day and age. This is basically the version of the quote that I've seen. You receive the ball and it feels like you've stolen something. 3 players come immediately. I don't know how technical players survive here. He was talking about, like how technical players are able to execute under the level of physical intensity that, arrives in the Prem. And I think it's because the way the sport has evolved, the highest level of the sport is now this just incredibly physical, unified pressing system that just exists for 90 minutes. And you're wondering, why players like Mesut Ozil and James Rodriguez get phased out of the game really aggressively. It's because they don't fucking do that. And the only guys that can live with not doing that are guys like Lionel Messi because he scores 300 goals a year, when he's in his prime. So Newcastle playing in that, really aggressive Premier League style. I think given Barcelona problems, I think Barcelona, when they're on ground that they're comfortable in, when they go to the camp now, I think they're going to be able to see away Newcastle. But don't be surprised if Newcastle is able to hang around in that tie way longer than you would expect. Barcelona was not comfortable in that, they were not comfortable in that match. Bayer Leverkusen and Arsenal. This, fortunately, because most of these are blowouts, looks like it's going to be one of the 2 good ties that we're going to have. We've got Barcelona against Newcastle, but of course, Barca's going to be a pretty heavy favorite. Bayer Leverkusen and Arsenal. Leverkusen took the lead through Andrich, who's a guy that I've managed in Football Manager a bunch and never liked, but hey, at least he's doing things well in real life. It's amazing how that bias survives. And then there was a penalty in the 89th minute for Arsenal. Penalty was complete bullshit. I'm going to make a whole separate video about it. But Arsenal needs to find the way that it played in the Champions League up to this point. Arsenal played freer in the Champions League than they did in the Premier League over the course of the first half of the season. The Arsenal that showed up in this match is the Arsenal that's been showing up in the Prem. And if that Arsenal shows up for the rest of the tournament, they're not going to win. I'm just going to be I'm going to be very, very honest with you. If we get the Arsenal that's playing in the Premier League instead of the Arsenal that's played in the Champions League up to this point, they are not going to win this tournament. They could get by Leverkusen, right? They've managed to battle their way to a draw, and now they're going to come home and they're going to, they're going to be playing in front of their fans, but you're going to fucking need more than 6 shots. Yeah, I mean, like you're going to need more from this team if they're going to be able to actually, I mean, they can. They won the Champions League stage. They are capable of it. It's like very frustrating for me to watch in some ways because I'm like, Arsenal's capable of more than what they're giving because they have this belief that obviously me sitting here at my lunch table talking to you, I just think that belief is wrong, that this is the best way for them to play, right? But this is the last 16. I think they definitely could get to the quarterfinals with that. I think we're in for a classic, kind of 1-0 Arsenal win over Leverkusen, maybe a 2-1, because I think it is, Leverkusen has a lot of players that can put the ball in the back of the net once, and they've shown a lot of heart and gusto to get to this point and turn around what was a kind of poor start at the beginning of the season. So I think Leverkusen's not necessarily dead, but I think it's very difficult for Leverkusen to get more than 1 goal. We're going to get the clamps down Arsenal. We're going to get the boring Arsenal, and they're going to try to just absolutely weather the storm and survive this tie and go to the quarterfinal. It'll work against Leverkusen. If you're playing PSG and you're playing Bayern Munich and you're playing Real Madrid, that shit's not going to fly. I just don't think that they're actually going to be able to pull it off all the way to the end. I could be wrong. We will see. Then there's Bodø Glimt against Sporting. This is the draw that I was kind of hoping would happen because then we get one of these teams in the quarterfinals. Bodø Glimt has won 3-0. They were the better team. They swaggered all over Sporting. People are saying it's because of the turf. I mean, yeah, like they play on turf. They live north of the Arctic Circle. If you want there to be clubs in places that aren't on the fucking Mediterranean, if you want there to be clubs in places that have adverse weather, then you're going to have to work with the turf. That's just like, and I think the turf stuff is overblown, right? I mean, I've obviously played a good bit in my life, and I think, the difference between playing in grass and playing on turf is really, the slide tackle hurts a little bit more, and as a goalkeeper, it hurts a little bit more to kind of dive around on the ground. The bounce of the ball is definitely a little different, but it's not, such a ridiculous advantage where a team from the Norwegian league should be beating Sporting 3-0, let alone all of the other wins they've gotten, let alone the fact that they've gone on the road against a couple of major European teams and won those ties as well. Like they didn't wheel the turf down to Milan in order to beat Inter in the second leg of that tie. So we're now looking at a world where Bodø Glimt, who seems clearly better than Sporting, is on the fast track to the quarterfinal of the Champions League. It is the most ridiculous story that's hit, I think, European club football in at least 10, 15 years. I think Porto winning the Champions League in whatever that was, 2006, is the last time, if you're going back, that you're going to run into something that is quite like Bodø Glimt. Because as I said earlier, even if Bodø Glimt happened to bow out now, the way Bodø is doing this is different. This isn't Greece at the Euros. This isn't, whoever it was, Apoel from Cyprus making the Champions League knockouts. They're outplaying them. They're not finding a way to beat them. They are being better at the sport, like being better at the basic principles of the sport than they are. These teams go up to Northern Norway. I don't know if they just don't want to be there. I don't know if they're just cold and they just fuck this. They look terrible. Right. And Bodø just comes out and just laps them, right? Just makes really good looking plays. Separation on the wing, sharp cross, guy gets in front of the defender, boom, back of the net. You know what I mean? Like it just was a bad, I mean, Sporting has got to be looking at this. If you're a Sporting fan, well, what a draw. You're playing the Norwegian, you're playing a team that finished second in the Norwegian league in the round of 16 of the Champions League to get to the quarterfinal, to get onto a stage that you might never be able to get to again if you're one of the players on this team. Very rare opportunity. Bodø Glimt's in its first ever Champions League, by the way. It's the first time they've ever played in the Champions League group stage / league stage and beyond. Keep that in mind as you watch this team continue to body teams that even a Sporting should be way out of their price range. Right, but they're picking them off. They're picking them off with ease. I mean, look at the freaking XG in this game. They won by 3, like statistically deservingly so. They won by 3. PSG beat Chelsea 5-2. This was a 2-2 match in the second half until PSG kind of just pulled away, right? They just, I mean, PSG's just better than Chelsea. Simple as, right? PSG's just got better players. Guys like Kvaratskhelia just made plays. Ball ended up in the back of the net. Now, Jorgensen was in goal for Chelsea. He had a bit of the Kinski yips. Could have been worse. He had a kind of bad turnover that ended up not being a goal for PSG because of an offside call. It was the correct offside call, but still a huge hint of fortune there for Jorgensen. Chelsea, I think, honestly, just because of the opponent, I think Chelsea has an even worse chance of turning this around than Tottenham does, just because PSG is way better than Atletico Madrid. Chelsea was doing a good job. You know, at a certain point in this match, they looked sharp, but PSG just PSG is better. There's a better team. And eventually that ended up mattering, and the ball ended up in the back of the net a couple times. And I don't mean to be overly hard on Jorgensen because he made 1 or 2 really nice saves in the game as well. I think that PSG found the winning time level. PSG found the we're Champions League winners level, and Chelsea could not match that. So the tie is going to be very difficult for it to not be over. And then there was this. Fede Valverde had the hat trick in the first half. This felt like a fever dream of a game. This felt like a release for Real Madrid. Like they've just been keeping this in, and they've been having all this terrible stuff happen where the Xabi Alonso drama, and they lose to Albacete, and Arbeloa's shit, and they're trying to figure out what's happening. And all of that just comes like whoosh. And they just feel the monkey's off their back. They feel 1,000,000 pounds lighter. Manchester City clearly is not the Manchester City of old, who this would have just not happened to. They just wouldn't have tolerated this in terms of their ability and their leadership. And there's just a bit of a changing of the guard happening at Manchester City. They still have a shot to win the league, but you have to prevent this sort of catastrophe from happening if you're going to make it easy to win the Champions League. Now, I will say this. Manchester City, I think I'm going to give them the best chance out of the 3 teams that are down 3 goals to turn it around. I'm going to give Manchester City the best chance because Real Madrid is a vibes-based team, but has been a little rudderless when it comes in the leadership department relative to what Real Madrid had leadership-wise in the past. Now Real Madrid gets a little fat and happy with the 3-0 win. I mean, you'd rather be up 3-0 than not. Manchester City is still obviously a very good team. They're going to be playing at home, and they've got the best striker in the world. Manchester City is going to come out here, away goals are not a thing, which would be a problem. If you lose 3-0 on the road, that's going to be a serious problem. But since away goals are not a thing, they can go out, they know they got to get goals. 4-1, 5-2, 3-0, doesn't matter. They got to beat Real Madrid by 3 goals. And I think this Real Madrid team, more so than most, is vulnerable to that. So I don't want to say this is over, but for the moment, this is just a good thing for Real Madrid. This is just like a sensational, yes, what a fantastic victory for the boys, and one that I know, Real Madrid fans must have really struggled going through that quote unquote tough period they had to endure there for a couple of months. But Real Madrid will now be fully believing they're going to win the Champions League again, and who's to doubt them? Right, sure, you've got PSG standing in the way, you have Bayern standing in the way, and you have, the Haram Ball Arsenal standing in the way. Hopefully we get fun Arsenal back, but right now it looks like it's going to be Haram Ball Arsenal. But Real Madrid has the talent, always, to be able to win any match that they're playing. And my goodness, Fede Valverde. He's so often overlooked that he probably needed a moment like this for people to acknowledge how good of a player he is.